Hi guys. so, yeah, I'm a little dressed up right now, considering it's October 31st, and spooky season as it were. I thought it'd be kind of cool to like dress up, and I guess I'm an Egyptian pharaoh or priest or something. I actually bought this costume back in like 2016 to 17 for like Halloween. Like every year in school, I would go dressed up, and this was my costume. and yeah, like this is a pretty old costume. I just found it like around in storage, so I just put it back on again. And I also am gonna watch a video that's very fitting for this day. Scary historical events that actually happened by Chat History. We've only ever seen one other video from this person. I believe it's Evil Kings and Evil Things They Did. Which introduced me to Timur, which is great. And yeah, I don't really have much else to say other than we should probably get to it, huh? So let's get scared together and learn about some scary historical events that actually happened.
Then you know the story of formerly alive President Abraham Lincoln's big night out on the town in 1865. Even if you're familiar with the historical artwork around the matter, you might ask yourself, who the heck are these other people? You know Lincoln, sure, and of course the guy
His wife was next to him, right? I believe his wife was there as well.
using Lincoln's skull as target practice is John Wilkes Booth. But also accompanying the president that night were his wife, Mary, close friend and Union Army Major Henry R. Rathbone, and his fiancée, Clara Harris. Lincoln and the gang were out celebrating the recent Union victory of the American Civil War and were seated in a private viewing box to the right of the stage in Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. What do you think of the play, dear? Just then, Confederate sore loser John Wilkes Booth entered the booth and took aim, blasting the president point blank in the head with a .44 caliber lead ball.
Yeah, I never thought about it, but John Wilkes Booth assassinating the president in a booth? Huh. The pun potential there. I never thought of that. Okay, I know this is kind of like humorous, but actually the death of Abraham Lincoln is actually incredibly tragic, actually. Yeah, like it's one of the worst. He's actually my favorite president. In American history, and I just think it's a shame that after all that he went through, like the dude really went through a lot. Like if you can look at like pictures of Abraham Lincoln at the start of his presidency and the end, the sheer transformation and stress this poor dude went through to keep our country together, only to meet his end like this when he could have I don't know. I think it's like one of the most saddest things in American history.
From his single-shot Derringer pistol. At the sound of the gunshot, Rathbone spun around to see Lincoln collapse in his chair with Booth standing in a cloud of smoke. He immediately leapt from his seat and charged the assassin, but Booth came well prepared. In the struggle, Booth was able to equip a dagger and severely slash Rathbone's arm before leaping from the box onto the stage. Right before jumping, Rathbone was able to grab Booth's coat, causing Booth to lose his balance and eat shit, fudging up his leg in the process. Despite being in a packed theater of witnesses and bystanders, Booth evaded capture for 12 days.
Yeah, then he got killed. Abraham. Yo, that's wild. I never heard the story of him like eating crap. Usually it's just he shot Abraham Lincoln and ran away. I think sometimes more undignified parts in history usually get left out in teachings. Which, by the way, I think humiliating John Wilkes Booth ain't such a bad thing. I think he deserves it.
Fargo is your...
However, his plan was successful as President Lincoln died from his injuries just 9 hours after the fatal game of tag. Rathbone, who passed out due to blood loss but eventually recovered from his injuries, personally placed the weight of the president's death on his shoulders. He believed he should have been able to prevent the assassination, and because of this, he bore immeasurable guilt every day of his life, absolutely destroying his mental well-being to the point of insanity.
Oh. That's like survivor's guilt, right? Like a form of it. That's sad. Like, I know this is meant to be more humorous, at least the way he's portraying events. Um, but like, I think that who could have expected, you know, Wilkes Booth to do what he did then and there? Like, he shouldn't have to put that all on himself. I think that's a little tragic. Like, it's not his fault. That Lincoln got shot.
After resigning from the military 5 years later, he struggled to find work until eventually given a consul position in Germany by President Arthur. Rathbone's now wife Clara had hoped that the change of scenery would do him some good.
Oh,
Rathbone's
no.
mental health continued to spiral, resulting in him lashing out at his young children and violently threatening Clara. After 13 years of mental deterioration, the breaking point had finally been reached. On December 23, 1883, Rathbone attacked his children in a fit of madness in their home. Clara had rushed to protect her children, but was fatally shot and stabbed by her husband.
Oh.
Instead of continuing his onslaught, he turned the knife on himself,
Oh.
stabbing himself in the chest 5 times.
Oh my god.
Despite the failed seppuku attempt, Rathbone survived his wounds, with police finding him covered in blood, claiming that there were people hidden in the walls of his home whispering to him. He was arrested and charged with the murder of his wife. During trial, he was officially declared insane by court doctors and committed to an asylum where he died 28 years.
I love the Phoenix Wright background, I noticed that. But, I thought the scary fact was Abraham Lincoln being shot. This went in a completely different direction. Oh my gosh. I mean, yeah, yeah. Especially back then, right? At least like nowadays, I feel like we're better off at least knowing about mental health. Like we can like deduce things like like PTSD, and I feel like nowadays we're so much more better informed of mental health, and I think for the most part, while it's not perfect, mind you, especially here in America, at least we acknowledge like mental health things as they are. And know it. Back then though, like people would have like PTSD and it would just be like, oh, that, just write it off or not know what it is fully, and stuff like that. So it probably like, yeah, it sucked more, I think, in the past to be stuck with stuff like this, like mental health problems and stuff. Though that does not excuse murder at all, but obviously the guy needed help. There's a lot there.
Years later.
Oh yes, the Murder Castle. Is he gonna talk about H.H. Holmes? Often dubbed America's first serial killer. I've heard a lot of things about H.H. Holmes. There's a lot of like theories and stuff around him. Like even some people going as far as speculate that he was Jack the Ripper. Just to give you an idea of how talked about this dude is. And, there's even been a lot of dispute. I've heard people even dispute this, because the Murder Castle he built this large, hotel so he can kill people, and apparently he has, like, numbers going up to, like, 200 bodies he caught, and that he was just, like, a serial killer who loved to murder, but there's been like disputes about him, like he wasn't actually like that. Like he definitely murdered people, but nowhere near to that number that's been speculated in the hundreds. And he was more of a con man, like, scheming. He killed his partner in crime, which is actually what helped get him caught, but it was more for like tax stuff, like insurance frauds and whatnot. And he was more motivated by money, less of the pleasure of killing, like what we think with killers. And he would usually resort to killing to just get something like money. While the more popular myth is, he was like other serial killers who killed just for the love of the game and the pleasure, and obviously those are some of the things that disputed. about him and his murder castle, which even some people going as far as claiming that it wasn't actually like legit the murder castle and that he didn't have all these trapdoor. I don't know, like I haven't looked too deep into it, just there's been people disputing it, the popular idea of it. I don't know fully, I haven't looked into it, though there is a novel called The Devil in the White City, and it is about him, though the way Holmes is portrayed in that novel, it's definitely for the pleasure, like he gets off on killing people, and he definitely loves it. But if there is some things about him is that he was known to be incredibly charming and charismatic, often like marrying multiple women without them knowing of each other, and working his way up to getting money. Even the murder castle itself has been said to be kind of like an insurance issue thing, scam or whatever it's called, fraud. And I think his most popular quote is that he said, "I was born with the devil in me," or something like that. So there's a lot about him. Some may be more mythologized than others, some facts. Either way, he is a very talked about subject, I guess, in true crime and stuff, so it's an interesting thing.
Henry Howard Holmes was an American con artist and the US's first documented serial killer. Born the lesser cool named Herman Mudgett, Holmes attended the University of Michigan's Department of Medicine and Surgery in 1882, where he allegedly would accompany his professor in various grave robbing activities as a way to supply the school with fresh bodies.
Yeah, people used to do that, by the way. Like, they used to go around just stealing bodies to give to medical students for cash. There's actually a duo of serial killers. I forgot if they were brothers or not. I think they were. I think they were just acquaint friends. But they perfected a way of murdering people, usually women, by suffocating them. I think like one would hold down the victim's legs while the other smothered them. So, a bloodless way to die, which helped back then, right? And then they would sell these bodies off, like, yeah, if you want to read about these two sick, people, they're called William Berkey and William Hare, double William, the double W, though they're both F's, in my opinion, yeah. So I like how that just came back, but yeah, but back to this. I'm sorry, I keep side ranting.
Examination and dissection. It was here that Holmes developed a slight obsession with death, and seldom does such an obsession lead to good things. After graduating medical school in 1884 and being upgraded to Dr. H.H. Holmes, he moved out to Chicago to work in a drugstore, which he eventually bought outright from the owner.
What is drugs?
Proceeds from that store helped to fund his newfound hobby that would soon evolve into something much more sinister. Holmes drew up plans for a hotel, one designed to be a death trap for all who entered. Not the best business model for return customers, but hey. Several contractors and architects were put on the job with a...
Yeah, I think he would keep, the story goes that he would keep, like, hiring and firing people, workers, so no one fully knew the layout of every area of his hotel. Which is, again, the guy was cunning, definitely smart, like, unfortunately he used his charisma and charm and power and intelligence for nefarious purposes, so wasted potential on that part.
Steady rotation of firing and hiring. Now, it's believed that this constant turnover kept everyone from knowing his true design intentions, with no one designer knowing the full scale of the operation at any given time. When it was fully built, the hotel had 3 floors, with the first one being mainly retail and including a new drugstore. Holmes used the hotel to accommodate travelers during the upcoming Chicago World's Fair in 1893, which attracted millions of people to the area. Now, according to legend, the hotel contained secret rooms, trick hallways, and trapdoors and torture chambers throughout. It was in this hotel that Holmes would allegedly trap and torture his victims, eventually selling their bodies to the local medical school as a way to satisfy his macabre desires while still making bank. During the World's Fair, Holmes would charisma check dozens of wealthy women to spend the night in the hotel for rest and relaxation, but they would never be seen again. It is believed that as many as 50
Yeah, like insane. Like I said, the dude was known for his charm and whatnot.
women went missing during the World's Fair, all linked to what Holmes would later call his murder castle. In August of the same year, the third floor of the hotel caught fire. While no one was injured, the fire destroyed most of the third floor, but Holmes had an ace up his sleeve: multiple insurance policies. But, like insurance companies do, they refused to pay out and accused Holmes of setting the fire himself and engaging in insurance fraud. Holmes, obviously angered by such accusations, quickly skedaddled out of Chicago. And over the following years, he continued to dabble in insurance fraud with his friend Benjamin Pitezel. For his next trick, Holmes had suffocated Pitezel with chloroform and burned his unconscious body for a life insurance payout. What's even worse is that through extreme coercion and manipulation,
Yeah, like I said, still a murderer, just probably not to the degree that legends have it. Again, it's disputed. I'm not sure which are facts or not. There is a lot of legends around the man that I've heard on and off. But there is no doubt he definitely killed people. But I think, yeah, like I said, disputed whether it was out of pleasure or out of more desire to get wealth. Because obviously with all his insurance scams and stuff. Either way, not an evil person either way, you know? Amoral. Yeah, I think that's the word I was looking for.
Holmes had convinced Pitezel's widowed wife to place 3 of her 5 children into his custody.
Ooh.
And over the years,
Yeah, I think he like locked them into like a crate or something, or suffocated them, which is insane. Something like that.
he would murder all 3. Holmes had forced the 2 older children, 13-year-old Alice and 9-year-old Nellie, into a trunk, drilled a hole through it, and plugged it with a gas line, suffocating them. He then buried their bodies in a cellar in his house. As for the third child, 7-year-old Howard, Holmes drugged the boy, dismembered, and burned his body, with only some teeth and bones being the identifying factors. Eventually, the children's remains were discovered, leading to Holmes's arrest and subsequent conviction of the Pitezel murders. He was sentenced to death and hanged in 1896, but not before confessing to over 200 murders thanks to his murder castle. But Holmes was regarded as a habitual liar, and experts believe that there was only enough evidence to link him to 9 murders. Still a high count, but not nearly the 200 that Holmes had claimed.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's kind of like certain killers, like Ted Bundy or stuff, will just say like, "Oh, I've got so much more thing." It's like, it's hard to trust these people because they were known to be liars. Maybe a part of it, it's like, oh well, maybe I can make myself live in infamy and have somewhat of a legacy since I've been caught. I'm not sure. Ugh, I hate learning about this stuff. You know, like my mom's a big fan of true crime. Like she watches serial killer documentaries all the time and shows related to it. Like I can only watch so much before I get like ugh. Like I don't know. I can't stand true crime. Though I know it's really popular among women. Like I look at some statistics, like a lot of women, especially like I've seen like in YouTubers talking about true crimes, are usually like women. That seems to be an interesting thing. But it kind of makes sense considering that a lot of the killers learning about are usually always targeting women. You know, all the famous serial killers and murderers, usually their victims are women. So that makes a lot of sense. You know, just to learn to be safe, right? Yeah.
As for the murder castle, it is confirmed that the stories about the design and the use of the building were widely sensationalized and over-exaggerated by local media. Sucks from a horror standpoint, but still makes a good story nonetheless, right?
Yeah.
Take a look at this face. Seem familiar at all? If not, then you're useless to me if I start joking. Anyway, this is a death mask, a plaster casting of the face of an unidentified woman who was pulled from the River Seine in Paris in the late 1880s. She became known as L'Inconnue de la Seine, or the unknown woman of the Seine. After being fished out of the French River, her body was placed in the Paris morgue, which, at the time, put nameless corpses on full display for the sake of identification by the general public who happened to be passing by.
That is so morbid. Yeah, back then, things were wild, like public executions and stuff. Like, people used to just kind of go to those things for entertainment. Like, what else are you gonna do, right? Let's go watch the public execution and, like, stuff like that. I think in some ways, older times were definitely a lot more wild than ours, and in other ways, ours are more wild than older. I don't know. But oh, that is so weird. Just to walk in like, oh, look at all these corpses. Let's see if we recognize one. Like, eesh.
Hey kids, look, it's Grandma. Because of this strange but effective method, the morgue became a popular tourist and public gathering spot, often referred to as the only free theater in Paris. This particular woman, however, was a bit of an oddity. Medical examination showed no visible wounds or signs of a struggle, so it was concluded that her death was self-inflicted, with her age being estimated at just 16 years old. But it was her calm, serene expression that caught the attention of a pathologist at the morgue. Since he couldn't take a picture to make it last longer, he decided to instead cast a plaster death mask of her face as a way to immortalize her. Creepily enough, but also to no surprise, many Parisians thought that having a face of a dead woman in their house to be the coolest thing since sliced baguette. Sacre bleu! So countless copies of the death mask were made. From an artistic standpoint, many interpretations claim that the young woman's demeanor expresses a calm control over death, being accepting of its inevitability rather than fear. From a non-artistic viewpoint, you have some dead girl's face hanging on your wall. Over the years,
Yeah, that's a bit weird. I don't want, like, a random person's dead face. It is a bit eerie, but I guess she must have accepted it. And good for her, because I honestly can't accept my mortality. Like, if anything, I, like, want to live more. Especially after I went through my whole depression and suicidal phase that ruled me the last 4 years. Pulling myself out of that actually instilled me with a greater sense of life. And I think, yeah, like I said, I don't want to die, and I think I'm more afraid and worried about my mortality in a sense. Also, that's why I keep trying to make YouTube videos, like, almost every day, because I just, like, I don't know, like, I guess I just want to try to make something of my life, I suppose. And, like I said, like, growing older and while privileged, and I do want to, it's like time's running out, so I'm driven just to keep going and going. Like, I'm not at ease with my mortality. Like, I'm happy to be alive and make it, but, like, I think I fear death and the possibility of dying more now than I have ever in my life. Especially making it through all that, And I'm happy to announce I'm no longer suicidal. I don't have those thoughts or feelings anymore. Like I said, it lasted from like 2022 all the way to like August of 2024 is mainly the main brunt of it. I've been fine for the most part. Back to normal, but like I said, the whole experience left me with, I fought to live. I wanted to live, despite my whatever suffering I was going through internally. And I think now it's just like, I'm not sure if it's a good or bad thing, but I'm not at ease with my mortality. I really want to live much longer, and the idea of death or my life, losing years and whatnot, like, troubles me. So, I don't know. Then again, I'm still kind of fresh off the whole experience, so things might be different, but either way, to face death that calmly definitely must be telling of something, right? Like, I don't know, it is something to give thought to.
her face had inspired several literary works, pieces of art, and even fashion. But where have you seen her face before? Well, believe it or not, chances are you've actually unknowingly given her mouth to mouth. Because hers is the face of the CPR training doll, which is used in almost all CPR training courses worldwide since 1960.
Oh.
Sure, that might be creepy, but at least it's thematically appropriate.
Oh, dang. I've never given, like, CPR training in my life, but, that is wild. I wonder why her face became the one for the dummy. Huh.
World War I was absolutely brutal. It was the forefront of many new innovations in warfare like tanks, heavy machine guns, and manned aircraft. All effective technologies developed for the sake of boosting your own kill count. But another, more sinister tactic was soon deployed onto the battlefield: chemical weapons. Perhaps the most widely used was mustard gas, but others were
Yeah, just the amount of military innovation that was introduced in one war is insane. Like, I feel bad. I mean, all veterans have it rough, right? But something about, like, World War I veterans and the trench warfare system and whatnot, like, makes me feel even, like, slightly worse for them. Like, I'm like, oh my goodness. You know, I would rather just, I would not want to be in like World War One or any war for that matter, but especially for this, like, you know, just how much got introduced between, you know, air warfare, the tank, the mustard gas, trench warfare, all that happened in just one war is insane, you know, from previous wars. Just the technological innovation and jump that was introduced is one of the most wild things ever.
used too. For instance, chlorine gas, a yellow-green gas which sure enough looks like a stereotypical funny fart cloud, but packs a lethal punch. This story begins in September of 1914, where German soldiers were tasked with taking the Russian-occupied Auschwitz fortress. It was constructed as a Russian Empire border defensive structure against German attack, and boy was it good at its job. German Empire units had repeatedly tried to penetrate the fortress, but were told no through heavy retaliatory gunfire and artillery. Despite facing multiple defeats, stubborn German soldiers refused to give up so easily. 3 assaults were conducted on the fortress over the course of a year. The first saw German infantry losses of about 6,000, while Russian forces only suffered 139. The second assault saw a continued bombardment on the fortress by German artillery, but the Russian soldiers didn't budge. This caused several month-long standoffs, which eventually resulted in German retreat. However, the third assault was to be the one to huff and puff and blow the fortress down. Returning to the fortress in August of 1915, the German forces now had fresh soldiers, even heavier artillery, and multiple canisters of chlorine gas. On the defensive side, the Russian line was only 900 strong, but they still took their chances against the impossible odds. After waiting several hours for favorable wind conditions, German soldiers bombarded the fortress with the deadly gas to flush out the enemy. The Russian soldiers, unfortunately, had no suitable protection against the gas and had to improvise, covering their faces with the best thing that they could come up with: rags soaked in piss. To no surprise, this proved ineffective. The soldiers were severely incapacitated by the gas, and now they smelled like piss. As a quick science lesson, when chlorine gas is inhaled, it reacts with the residual moisture in your body, forming hydrochloric acid, which starts to corrode your internal organs. In short, it causes big ouchies on the inside. With this mechanism of action being well known, the Germans were certain of their victory and began to infiltrate the fortress, but were met with a horrific sight. Despite suffering in complete agony, covered in blisters and coughing up lungs and blood, the Russian soldiers still stood their ground and continued fighting. The German troops, of course, shized their hosen at the sight of the seemingly undead Russians and fled.
Yo, that is wild. That's like, that looks like a zombie apocalypse at the start there, right? Seeing that sight. But man, those poor soldiers, like I'm telling you, like, man, World War I veterans, dude, I feel bad for all veterans, by the way. I'm not, you know, but I'm just saying, especially for these ones, like, just wild.
From the fortress in a complete panic, with some even stumbling into barbed wire in the process. The rest of the German troops immediately hightailed it out of there. Although successful, most of the Russian defense died from the gas. Those who did survive barely got by the skin of their whatever they had left. Sadly, Russian troops preemptively demolished most of the fortress as Germans began closing in for a 4th time later that month. Just as a quick warning, I'm going to be showing some graphic medical photos of real syphilis patients, so if you don't want to see that, click away now.
I have to for the video, but trust me, I would skip if I could. Like, I get I get disturbed very easily. You guys probably, I'm not sure if you can tell, but I'm pretty disturbed after all we've covered already in this video. Well, time to save the best for last, eh? Let's do it. Let's just rough it out, guys.
There you go. Usually when you hear the phrase Italian Renaissance, you think of high-class society, revolutionary innovation, and lots of statues of dudes with their dicks out. Well, allow me to throw a wrench in that perception by introducing you to the concept of syphilis zombies. Syphilis? Like the guy with the boulder? No, silly. Syphilis. Like the STD. Quick backstory. In 1494, the King of Naples, Ferdinand I, died of butthole cancer. If his name sounds familiar, it's because he's one
Yeah, we covered him and his black museum, which is insane.
of those evil kings that I covered in a previous video, so you can check that out if you haven't. Wink. Anyway, Ferdy's son Alfonso II took his daddy's throne but was quickly put in a state of check by French King Guy Charles VIII, who claimed that he had claim to the throne because of his noble Angevin bloodline. Or so he claimed. Little Alfonso was like, well, how about you just take Milan instead? Your lawn? No, Milan. Well, why would I want your lawn? I hate mowing. Are you serious right now? After some clarification, King Charles agreed, and with 30-some thousand soldiers, invaded Italy, took over Milan, but felt unsatisfied. Oh sweet, Charles took Milan. Oh, he's heading this way too. Why is he heading this way? Naples was also taken. With such a successful campaign through the peninsula, the French army, which consisted of Spanish, Swiss, Flemish, and even Italian soldiers, decided to celebrate. And you bet your sweet balls that meant women and alcohol were involved in medically inadvisable quantities. When you have a bunch of people from all over Europe quite literally come together in one city, there's gonna be some interesting results. This one was syphilis. Actually, it was kind of like a super syphilis, as historians generally agree that the strain that went around was much more severe than its modern cousin that we are more familiar with. That is the rhetorical we, of course. This meant that the disease was much more contagious with symptoms that were much more severe. Since it was the Renaissance, let me paint you a picture of how it all went down. Your first step is finishing up your very consensual physical time slot with a local woman of the night. During your bi-weekly wash, you notice something around your own peninsula. You have genital ulcers, small open wounds forming around your tender meat log.
Oh,
But
God.
that worry is quickly put to rest as you develop a bad fever, multiple rashes, and muscle pain. Get used to that because you're gonna be like that for a few months. As you continue to live your now much more miserable life, you discover the formation of big, stinky, painful sores and abscesses across your body. These sores start to penetrate deeper and deeper into your tissue until your flesh quite literally rots to the bone. The bacteria eats away at your skin, your eyes, your nose, and your lips. You don't die just yet, but you wish you would. For months or even years, piece by piece, you fall apart, with chunks of your body just sliding right off.
Oh my gosh. Holy crap. I'm trying not to look, but I'm also like, I'm looking at this with the side of my eye and I'm still troubled. You know, I regret this whole video. I regret all this.
Got your nose. Thousands of people were walking around like this day in and day out.
Oh, God.
Eventually, the soldiers were expelled from Italy and returned to their respective homes. Within a few years, syphilis ran rampant through most of Europe, and by 1520, the so-called French disease infected Africa and Asia as well. So remember, fellas and fellettes, never engage in sexual relations with a 15th century French soldier in Naples. But you can still finger that subscribe button, and you can also watch more videos.
Okay. Well, that was a fun video. Now, I mean, I liked it, but also I didn't like it for reasons. So, I'm sorry. I get like weirded out and like disturbed easily, guys. So, either way, yeah, I guess I'll see you tomorrow or we cover something new.